there's something in the water here, in the air here, in the system here, that allows them to take root and prosper. But I think that what Detroit needs is to go one step further, which is not just to allow them to come and prosper, but to take them into the bosom of the city and to embrace them the way that in the United States, that let's say New York has, or Los Angeles has. And I think that's the sort of tipping point. When that begins to happen, you begin to see the recovery of this.
Stephen, you and I have talked before about this phenomenon in Detroit where everybody wants to see your credentials before you're allowed to take part in the conversation. The 313 area code to come to this party, where do you live, where do you work,
where do you shop?
Where do you shop? You have to hand out this dossier before you're really allowed to take. But race is wrapped up in that as well.
I think race and class is certainly wrapped up in it too. And there are people in my own neighborhood specifically who took offense that I would go to Grosse Pointe to buy groceries. Well, I'm like, you know what? It's difficult to buy fruits and vegetables and things except on Saturdays at Easter Market, which is fantastic. But it's very difficult for me because of my schedule and plan. My eating schedule, it's just not going to work. I don't think about, perhaps because I'm not from here, I don't think about, I don't have this sort of racial and geographic baggage to crossing my road, and people don't really get it.
Stephen and I have talked about race in Detroit a lot. I'm from Atlanta, which is the majority black city most of my life. Had black political rule from about the same time as Detroit. And Stephen is from New Orleans, which has a much more integrated culture than, much like you're talking about, kind of people deal with each other. It's not, there may be racism, there may be racial division. Same way in Atlanta, but in Atlanta, there was a lot of tension between the black political leadership and the white business leadership, but they always managed to accommodate themselves. Here, that didn't happen. There was a real alienation, and I've tried, and a lot of people blame it on one person. I think that's very simplistic. I don't think you can blame everything on one person or one. I think, I've wondered if the roots of it don't lie somewhere in the whole union management structure of the relationship built upon conflict from the beginning. Conflict, class, everyone staying in their place. If you look at the difference in the South, for example, between Atlanta and Birmingham, one of the reasons in Birmingham, what do we all remember about Birmingham, even today? We all remember dogs and clubs. Well, the fact is, and we don't remember anything like that about Atlanta, because nothing like that happened in Atlanta. Why is that? Probably the reason it happened in Birmingham is because Birmingham is a steel industry town, and the steel industry was used to beating people up and putting dogs on them before it became a racial issue. That was their culture. And I think somewhere in the history of Detroit lies the groundwork for this living in pods.
We're going to get to questions now that you guys have been filling out the cards, but before, as we prepare to do that, I want to let Stephen get one last thought here on where I know you do sense some great energy and some great hope in a lot of young people who seem to have a different view about Detroit and how it's the place to be for a lot of people.
Sure. I mean, especially in Midtown, I think it's one of the most vital and interesting points of Detroit. I spent a great deal of time with friends who actually bought condos and they're looking to buy more property in that part of town. And that's very encouraging to see. I think the big question is how do you...
I know a house that's coming for sale.
Actually,
it's not. It's going to be given a share. Go ahead.
Well, it's up for sale.
It's for sale. The money's there. That's what yes, I'm sorry.
But I think the big question is how do you connect this increasingly vital part of town to very sparsely populated, just frankly desolate.
Yeah.
What do you do?
Well, this experiment of, in fact, that's I believe part of the argument. This experiment of trying to shrink the city or resize the city, not shrinkage is becoming a word that nobody is comfortable with. But right-sizing the city is really quite an experiment that's not being taken here. We got the. You ready for some questions for a second? I have a couple.
Okay. This one is for Stephen. If the assignment wasn't over and you could stay in Detroit, would you and why?
I would.
You can get some fruits and vegetables.
In a gym. In a gym. Right. I live in
I don't have a gym in downtown either, so.
well, in D.C., I mean, in downtown Detroit, I would, but it's like, you have so many reasons not to go to the gym in Detroit. It's so far. In D.C., I'm a block away, so I have no excuse even, so.
The lack of fruits and vegetables really play into that nicely.
But I would stay because it takes a good year to fully to get an institution from a place that they're comfortable. And there's so many Detroit stories of resilience and renewal in Detroit. I wish I had more time on the ground. I shall be back to cover.
Great. Is there a lesson, this is for all of you, is there a lesson that can be learned from the rise and fall and hopefully rise again of Detroit? What's the biggest takeaway?
Well, I mean, for me, I think one of the obvious is don't be reliant on a single industry. I mean, that's the obvious one. I think also Detroit desperately needs to attract, as Bobby has written about, it desperately needs to attract people from other parts of the world. It has to be open to people from other parts of the world, other parts of the country, and shake off a sense of nativism that I've encountered here.
For anybody who hasn't read it, this is an interesting moment for Islam in America, and that's one of the places where you see a kind of connectivity that works for Detroit that might not make everyone completely comfortable, given this sort of the temper of the world times right now.
Well, yeah, that was quite interesting to me. I mean, at a time in this country when Islam is such a divisive subject, and people are sort of polarized over how they feel. In Detroit, I saw, and I don't want to make too much of this, but there was enough that gave me hope. I saw signs of Islam actually acting as a bond between communities. It has been true for a long time that the different mosques in this city are quite ethnic and race specific. And so if you're African American Muslim, you go to certain mosques. If you're an Arab Muslim, you go to certain parts. If you're from South Asia, you go to yet other parts. But even in the course of this year that I've sort of traveled several times to Detroit and been to several of these mosques, I've seen the congregation change a little. And so there are more African Americans in mosques out close to Dearborn, or in areas where previously you'd only see people of Arab descent, and vice versa. And so there's a little mingling going on there. And Islam, which, as I said, is so often seen as sort of exclusionary and divisive, wrongly so, here is in some ways sort of bringing at least some elements of the community together, which I thought
It's counter to the old saying that we're never more segregated than we are on Sunday morning in America.
Exactly.
I think the biggest lesson of Detroit mirrors the lesson of the automobile industry, which is the longer you put off difficult decisions, the more difficult the decisions you face become. And Detroit and the auto industry have put off some very difficult decisions for a long time. The automobile industry finally ran out of decisions, and it basically was taken away from them, and the decisions were made by other people. I'm not sure that how that parallel plays out in the future of Detroit, but somebody has to make some tough decisions, or they're just going to get tougher and tougher and tougher.
Okay, John, this is for you. One intent of your experiment was to shake up a national audience. Did it work, and how?
One intent of what? Of this experiment. Oh, this experiment.
Yes.
Well, I do think that, you have to be the judge of that, but I do think you have to remember that we didn't really set about to do this project for the people